O, hej Marta. Cześć, miło Cię widzieć. Hi everyone. How are you today? I hope you had a wonderful weekend and wonderful Sunday. Oh, Krista is here. Okay, let's try to add Krista to our chat. When my brain hits. Okay, one more time. Yay!
Hi! How's it going, Yukis?
Hi! Everything's fine.
Oh my gosh,
I'm
and you
so
wore
excited to see
such a
you.
you're wearing a colorful shirt. Did you do that
Yeah!
for me?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. That's a really rad shirt. So not many people know this about me, but I have a bit like a fascination with eyes, and the fact that you have an eye on your shirt right now is amazing.
Yeah, this is my, yeah, I like really this shirt. My wife bought it to me.
It's
So,
beautiful. I love
thank you very much. I'm so happy to see you here. Finally,
it. Yeah,
so sorry for this Friday.
that's okay. Life happens.
Yeah, and I know this is so important today to speak with you
Definitely.
because I know after my diagnosis, every meeting, every speak about OCD, about mental health really matters.
Hmm. Well, I'm really happy that one, that you're doing well, and two, that you're really wanting to be open and talking about taboo and stigma particular topics, because it does seem that, especially with particular taboo themes, it even seems within the OCD community, people really struggle talking about it. And so I'm happy that you're kind of just like busting through the door and saying, "Hey, let's talk about this."
Yeah, because I know there are so many people struggling alone without any help, and they really scared. I know they're really scared to speak about it, to ask for help, and also people without OCD, I think, are not aware, and they're scared too because of these
Yeah.
taboo thoughts, and that's why we're here and why we speak
Yes.
about it.
Absolutely. And do you mind if I kind of open and share just like a little
Yeah,
story about myself as to
yeah,
why taboo topics are so important to me?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Awesome. So when I was really struggling, and I'm going to give you kind of like some dates to give you like a frame of reference. And so I had just became a therapist. This was in 2008. And I knew that I had OCD. I knew that I was particularly struggling with a very taboo related topic. And keeping in mind, and I'll say what that was in a bit, and keeping in mind that when I was struggling, I was primarily seeing ages 0 to 3 in my practice. I was really working hard on primarily working with kids who experienced sexual trauma in infancy and working on what is called like infant mental health. And so that was a large part of my caseload, was very young
Hmm.
children. And
Yeah.
they all had some type of sexual violence had been a part of their life in one way or another. And I was constantly in my head, just absolutely terrified that I was going to re-molest every single one of my clients. And as a therapist, I can't think of anything more taboo, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, we hear stories about um, adult clients having relations with their therapist, but we definitely are not, hearing a lot about a therapist molesting their clients. And I remember in sessions sitting on my hands and constantly Googling. Like I was absolutely convinced that the FBI was going to somehow like find out, which we hear this all the time, was going to find out that from 2007 to 2010, like this is when Krista was really compulsively Googling, am I a pedophile? Am I going to harm my clients? And I was really struggling with this. And so in 2010, I went to a therapist. And I went to this therapist because I was desperate. I was really struggling. Nothing I was doing was working. And I went to this particular therapist because he said all the right things. He had this fancy degree, he had all these fancy certifications. And he said the big one, I treat obsessive compulsive disorder. I was like, perfect, because I knew down to my core, I had Googled it enough that what I was experiencing was an obsessive thought, that it really wasn't me. And when I went to this therapy session, I had laid it out first thing. I said, here's the thing. I have OCD and I am having these thoughts that I am going to sexually molest my clients. And it's absolutely ruining my sessions with my clients.
Yeah.
I'm really afraid that I'm going to ruin it's going to ruin my career. And he spent the entire hour doing a risk assessment. He spent the entire hour checking to see whether or not I was going to be safe around not only just my clients, but around children in general. And then the very end, he had told me, you're fine. I don't think that there's going to be any concern with you. There's no way you're going to harm your clients. There's no way oh my God, Krista, you're fine. You have such a big heart. And I left that office being absolutely terrified that he was going to report me, that he was going to call the authorities and let them know that there's this pervert therapist out there and she's going to harm your kids. And I remember the receptionist saying, ma'am, would you like to schedule for next time? And I said, hell no, because I was convinced I was going to lose everything because this therapist just lied to me. And then I
Yeah.
spent a very, very long time struggling with that connection. And so having those moments and actually going to somebody who said they treated OCD is one, why I became an OCD specialist, but also two, why I really have such an emphasis on taboo things like pedophilia, for instance, because there's such a huge misconception about
Yeah.
this. And Googling anything pedophilia OCD related, if it's not from an OCD therapist, is horrible, to say the least.
Yeah.
The things that people say, it just makes you feel worse. And I'm on this side, and I can tell people absolutely, it really does get better.
Yeah, and it's really hard to trust anyone, especially when you want to find a therapist and to
Yeah.
trust this therapist to tell about these thoughts, about pedophile thoughts, or for example about harm OCD too, because
Yes.
we really we don't know what will they think or what will they do after session about that.
Exactly. And there's that like after concern of, does my therapist think I'm crazy? Does my therapist believe me? And we never want any of our clients to feel that way because they're
Yeah.
not going to get better. But anyways, I just wanted to kind of start off with that and say this is why talking about not just only taboo topics, but talking about things that are stigma related are such an interest to me, and they're also just really important to me.
Yeah, to me too, because there are so many people who doesn't understand that my thoughts are not me, and there is a huge misconceptions about that when we thought about something, we want to do something. This is the problem because
Yes.
people see connection between thinking and acting.
Hmm. They're very different. They're very different. And I even remember before I became an OCD specialist, just even primarily talking with individuals who are experiencing trauma, and they were having some pretty upsetting thoughts and saying, well, my God, what if I am capable of doing something like this? And
Yeah.
you don't have to reassure people over and over and over again that don't have OCD. You don't have to tell them this doesn't make any sense to you. Individuals know this doesn't make sense to them, and that's why we're able to even move on. It's really common for people to have this sense of what if or sense of curiosity that, what if I could do this? What if I'm capable of doing this? But really, it's kind of more of just a curiosity and a fleeting thought. They're
Mm,
not stuck with it.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And Krista, after my diagnosis, the really first thing my wife checked was if I am dangerous.
Mm.
When when I told her what my therapist told me, yeah, Lucas, you have OCD, and that's it. And my wife started googling if my kids are safe and my whole family are safe. And this is uh, this is connected with this misconception because
Hmm.
we we have different thoughts, intrusive thoughts, but we don't want to do these terrible things.
Absolutely.
We don't want to have these thoughts.
Absolutely. These aren't
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, these thoughts are against our values.
Yes. Absolutely. These thoughts aren't fun, and these thoughts, they're doubts. We hear this all the time that OCD is the doubting disorder. We're
Mm,
having these thoughts, and it's because we're doubting them. They come to our mind and they're causing us a significant amount of grief because we're doubting whether or not we could be or might be this awful thing that pops up in our mind. I think of I heard this on a podcast years and years ago. I believe it was Jenna Overball is the one that said this, who I love and adore. And I love the concept that she has, particularly when it comes to parenting. And one of the things that she had said was, I trust my clients particularly with harm OCD versus any other babysitter or anybody that you might like say like on care.com or any like babysitter site, because research has shown and statistics have shown that those individuals with harm OCD are so much safer and empathetic than individuals who don't have that. Because
mm,
you think about what it does to their core is it's constantly telling them there might be this bad thing, they might be this evil thing, or just whatever it might be conveying to them. And they're doing everything they can in their power to make sure that they're not that. And that's
mm,
such an amazing and powerful. And I remember hearing that years ago and thinking like that's such a beautiful way of putting it. That anytime I have somebody walk through my office saying, I'm so afraid that I might be this scary thing, I say, you know what I'm hearing is complete the opposite. Like if your OCD is saying, like for instance, like if somebody of faith, what if what if I'm praying to the wrong God? What if I'm praying wrong? What if
mm,
I go to hell? What if all this kind of things? And I think, wow, religion is so important to you that your OCD
yeah,
has latched onto that so much that you're making for sure that you're doing everything holy. And you know what? Man, you must be a fantastic parishioner in your
yeah,
church. I
yeah.
bet your religious leader just absolutely loves you. And they're blown away by those statements because they don't see that within themselves because the OCD is telling them such an opposite story.
Yeah, this is really awesome. This is really awesome point, and I think when, for example, a really terrible person, for example, pedophile, I think
Hmm.
he doesn't think about this in that way. Oh, I'm so scared to do this, or oh,
No.
this is so important to me to not to do this. No, this is what you said, totally opposite, absolutely opposite way when we have OCD. and it's connected with it. This thoughts hits our values, so we really care about our families, about children, about religion, about that we don't want to hurt anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But
Absolutely.
these taboo thoughts trigger us so much, and they cause so strong emotions and feelings, because these thoughts are really terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we also don't have to give emphasis to the thoughts because the thoughts are just thoughts. Like
Yeah,
right now in this moment, I can, and granted, this is a very different situation because we know that thoughts by themselves are, they just pop up, they're just random. But doubts in itself, obsessions in themselves are actually triggered by something. And so, for instance, I could in this situation put in my brain the most gruesome, heinous crime that I could absolutely imagine and put my face to the criminal. That does not mean it's real. That doesn't mean that it's happening. That is my imagination conjuring up a story. But individuals with that will take onto that and say, but my gosh, but that is my brain. And that is popping up in my head. What does that say about me? We just get so absorbed into these
mm,
stories in such a deep and meaningful way when in reality we're having, let's be real, we're having messed up thoughts all day every day, but OCD is only latching on to like very particular things, and it's completely shutting out all the other thoughts because it's these particular thoughts, like you had said earlier, that are really latching onto our values, and it's making it seem and feel so much more real. I could go on and on and on about that, but I really do want to talk just about even like stigma in general, because I'd love to be able to share why is it that stigma not only just one exists in general, but why does it exist so much in the OCD community? Because let's be real, like for instance, POCD, pedophilia OCD, is still one of the most stigmatized topics, even in this beautiful, safe community that is the OCD
yeah,
community. So,
yeah, absolutely.
so do you mind if I just go for it? I have so much to say. I talk a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Also,
cool. Roll up
yeah.
my sleeves for
Keep
this.
going,
Okay, great.
keep going.
Um, I have always been very, very interested in talking and having conversations about things that are wild, first of all. And there's a book that I remember reading years and years ago, and I recommend this so often to therapists and just anybody in general who's interested in learning more about stigma. So it's called Stigma: Notes of the Management of the Spoiled Identity. And it's from 1963 to give you an idea. It's an old book. It was written by a sociologist, Irving Goodman. But what I really appreciate about this book is in the very first part of the book, he actually identifies what stigma is and he classifies it in three different categories. And I wanted to point that out before I point out some modern stuff because this is 1963 we're talking about, and at the same time, not much has changed. Not much has changed, which is
Mhm,
also kind of sad. So he points out that the first category is physical stigma. So these are going to be things that are like physical deformities. We can think about individuals of like war veterans who maybe had a leg amputated. We can think of individuals with birth
mhm.
defects. We can even think of individuals with glasses, maybe some type of like visual impairment.
Yep.
Anything that is outside of normal and healthy. It's again, this is 1963, and you're going to hear some of this stuff and say, "Wow, we really haven't changed much." The second one that I'm going to focus on a little bit more is stigma of character traits. And that's where we're going to see like mental disorders, but we can also see stuff like sexual identity, or sorry, gender identity, sexual orientation,
Mhm,
addiction, imprisonment, anything character or personality is kind of fits into this one. And then the last one is group identity, um, which we see is a huge reason. I'm going to be real with this. It's a huge reason why a lot of wars happen. And this is where it can fit into just who you are as an individual or who you are as a people. So race, religion, nationalities, and so forth. But I want to primarily talk about the stigma of character traits because we're talking about obsessive compulsive disorder. It's really absolutely fascinating that back in 1963, this sociologist labeled all these different stigma traits. These have not changed.
Hmm.
However, I will say I do see kind of like this, I don't know what the right word for this, insurgents maybe, that have like has really changed in the last 5 years, that we're seeing more and more people actually identify and saying, I am, they're not calling themselves one of these stigmas, but they're basically saying, I am this stigmatized self. I am this thing that for years I had to be sheltered or closeted or hid from. And now this is me. I mean, even just you and I on here right now talking about this is
Hmm.
going against social norms. But this is where we really start to break stigma. This is really where we start to break the silence, because there could be an individual who sees this recording in a couple days and this is going to save their life because they feel heard and they feel seen. And this is
Yeah, yeah,
so
absolutely.
incredibly important. And thank you, by the way, for having these lives and being able to talk about this kind of stuff, because down to the core, this is how we're breaking the stigma, which is again crazy that this book came out so long ago and we as a
Yeah,
society and as a people really haven't seen a lot of change since then. But I really, again, and I don't know if it was like the worldwide like shutdowns and everything from COVID, but I'm absolutely seeing and hearing so many amazing situations where people are just like, this is me, and that's okay. And
yeah,
I think that
yeah,
that's a really, yeah, and I think that's a really beautiful thing, because for years, I'm not going to throw you under this, but I'll say this for myself. I didn't tell my family I had OCD until I was 38, and I'm going to be 42 this year. I was embarrassed. I didn't know how
mhm.
to tell them. And
Yeah,
still,
yeah,
and it still,
yeah.
it feels like,
In
ugh.
in my case, the same. I wait almost 3 year after COVID starts to
Mhm.
tell my wife because OCD ruined my life, and I was so scared to tell about this to anyone. And I'm struggling with OCD, so
Yeah.
I was really scared. But when people have taboo thoughts, POCD, harm OCD, or something like this, it's even harder, I think, because there is a really bad reaction of society for these thoughts, and
Mhm.
this is really important that we speak about this right now, because
Mhm.
uh, I think we can give people hope.
Yeah.
We can make them seen and make them feel less alone. And when people see that we can speak about this here out loud, showing our faces,
Yeah.
this can really change something.
Absolutely. I think that it's really, if in fact, I'm gonna kind of rewind just a second. So one of the things that I do within the OCD community, and I'm very fortunate that I get to do it, is I get to look at some of the proposals that go for the International OCD Foundation Conference. I'm on the review committee, and I will occasionally go through and see like personal stories. And sometimes a personal story comes through and the individual's like in treatment. And sometimes a personal, like a proposal will come through and the person has had a lot of hiccups a lot along the way and so forth. One, those personal stories need to be heard and they deserve to be heard. And every single person that is going through something, I completely commend you for wanting to share your story. And at the same time, as somebody who has been through it herself, we have got to hear those hiccups along the way. We have got to hear, because that's the reality of this. You know, our culture absolutely wants us, and I can't speak, I can only speak to American culture. I can't speak to Polish culture. It really wants us to get well and stay well. That is not how chronic disorders and chronic illnesses work. It's a maintenance. You are constantly working on yourself. And you talked about ROCD. Man, I had whew, a really, really like gut wrenching like ROCD happen like right before the conference, the IOCDF conference last year. And I had to work on my steps. I had to do the things that I work with my clients in order for me to work through it. Because this stuff is so hard and I can't get on myself and say, but I've already, I'm already in recovery. I'm doing really well. Like, I can't feel this pressure regarding stigma of feeling like because I've had the treatment and because I'm better, that I'm supposed to stay better. I don't think that there's enough talk about what recovery really looks like and that you're going to have hiccups along the way. So anybody that's, sharing their story, you know, it's absolutely okay to say, hey, I also in this time being when I, had a lapse or a relapse, I fell into substance abuse or I wanted to end my life or something, because hearing those stories is also part of breaking the stigma of letting us know that not only do you struggle from time to time, but you are also able to pull yourself out. And if you're not able to pull yourself out, what is happening and how can we as a community help? Because again, videos like this are so incredibly substantial in helping people to get unstuck.
Yeah, that's really important to me, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm really happy we speak about this because when we speak about OCD and especially about taboo thoughts, there is so much guilt and shame, and there really these feelings and emotions seems to be real. They
Yeah.
are real, but we think that we really want to do this, and oh
Mm-hmm.
shit, I'm terrible person, I'm a devil or something if I or if I have for example body response for something when I'm
Yeah.
lying near my
Yeah.
kid. This is really um uh, yeah, this is really um really hard to have these bodily responses because this is like a mindfuck or something.
It really is. But the one thing that is so key in understanding the physiological urges, like the groinal response, which that's a fun one, is it's a sensation. And
Yeah,
sensations are not symptoms. And that's it's so incredibly important to remember is that these sensations just pass. Symptoms don't pass because symptoms are
yeah,
related to something bigger and something that has to be treated. A groinal response is simply just your brain just also trying to mess with you and again
yeah.
trying to get you sucked into this story that is complete and utter bullshit.
Yeah, and that's why we should spread awareness because people with OCD, when they're alone in their home and they have a thought, terrible thought, taboo thought, and then there comes a bodily response, groinal response or something.
Mm.
They feel really guilty and shamed, and this is
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to, if it's okay, I want to share. I have so many stories. We're all
yeah,
storytellers.
awesome,
Okay. I'm a
awesome.
big talker too. So I had this client several years ago come to me, and they were to the point and at very, very, very just wanting to end their life. Really, really struggling with a lot of different things. Their previous therapist had said they treated OCD. They did not. I actually had told I told some other, it was a complicated situation where this person needs to be reported to the licensing board because this person caused a lot of harm to this client who I treated years ago. And because what this person did is, so this person had a mixture of homicidal related obsessions and pedophilia obsessions. So, and this was young, 19, young.
Mm-hmm.
And this therapist, uh, it almost makes me like want to have like like some type of like visceral reaction because it absolutely breaks my heart how this therapist treated this particular client. So it turns out that this particular therapist had said, well, if you're a pedophile and you're going to harm people, you have got to tell your job this. So this kid did, because this is a medical professional that told him to do this. And so, of course, he told his job, I am a pedophile. And they reacted like I think most people would. They fired him. And that's obviously not good. You want people to work. Like that is a mean of functioning. And the fact that this therapist took that away from them, saying that they treated OCD, is just absolutely beyond me. But that doesn't stop there. This therapist would get to the point to where they were no longer feeling safe in working with them, so they had to have another colleague outside of the door every single time this person came because she feared for her life. She feared for her life. And I believe that she had this particular person hospitalized more than she actually saw the person in her office. And hearing the particular things that came across were just absolutely disheartening. And by the way, this dude's doing totally fine. He was also put on so many antipsychotics. It was in my opinion malpractice. But this is also why we have got to continue talking about this, and not just in this, but also just even in the medical community, because this was a situation where this was a 19-year-old who was telling the therapist, I am afraid that I'm going to do XYZ. And that therapist validated those fears. And that therapist not only validated it, it made it to the point to where this individual actually wanted to end his life because he was not reassured, not that we want to reassure anybody, but he wasn't reassured at any given point that he's not this being that he's fearing the most, that he is this being that he is fearing the most. And it just absolutely blows my mind and breaks my heart that individuals like this can do this. In fact, there's a research study that even shows, this came out 2013 or something like that. I'd be curious to see an updated one that shows individuals with OCD, only about 30 to 40% of them are actually going into treatment. And you guess this is going to blow your mind, okay? But also validate. 10% are getting proper treatment. So of the 30 to 40% of individuals who have OCD, who are going into therapy, only 10% are actually getting proper treatment.
Yeah, that's really sad.
It's so sad. It's so incredibly sad.
Unbelievable.
It's so sad, and it makes me think of those individuals who have these taboo thoughts, who are having these thoughts that are so stigmatized in our culture. What's it like for them? Are they part of the 10%? And they might not be, because I think of situations like when I went into treatment, I was definitely not in that 10%.
Yeah, that's really, really sad. And I can remember two situations after my when I was in Polish television 2 weeks ago, or three weeks ago.
Which is so awesome you did that, by the way. Love that you did that.
Thank you so much. So after that, one mother called me and asked me what should she do because she has kid with OCD, and this kid, 15 years old kid, goes to two different therapists because she doesn't know what is good, this therapy, this kind of therapy or something, and she really don't doesn't know what to do. And the second situation was when, and I have a friend in Warsaw, and she has OCD, harm OCD, and one day she had a really hard OCD time, and she called emergency and said she's really scared because she thought that she can harm their children, and they want to take their children from her. And this is really terrible because even therapists in Poland and global, I think there are more therapists who don't know what to do with OCD, especially when someone go there and tell about taboo thoughts, and even therapists. And we speak here about society, about families, and this is hard to understand. But even therapists have problem with this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think about, not just the situation that I told you with that therapist who eventually became afraid of her client. How many of those stories are we not hearing about? How many of those stories are therapists, are they actually afraid of their clients? Or do they think that their clients are crazy or something like that? And I can tell you that even when I was at my worst, I was not crazy. I knew what was happening in my mind did not make sense to me. Regardless if the therapist is OCD trained or not, we have got to start listening to the clients. I absolutely see with some therapists this godlike complex that can happen where the therapist knows more than their client, which is absolute stupid. It's stupidity because I'm sorry, the client is always going to know more about themselves than the therapist ever will. But the second the client says something, the therapist immediately has this response. And that absolutely drives me crazy because I think about, okay, cool that you have this response about harm or relationships or religion or whatever. Did you actually hear that the client said, I'm having these thoughts and I don't want them there? It's upsetting me. I'm afraid that I'm going to do it. That is such a key thing. Even if you don't, even if you're not trained in OCD, just hearing the client say, I'm afraid that I'm going to do X, Y,
Absolutely.
Z. That to me seems like such a red flag of like, ding, 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 something is happening. This person is having this thought that doesn't make sense to them. Then why would you ever assess and tell that client that the thing that they're afraid of doing is them? That doesn't make any sense. What if I come in and I say, you know what, I'm afraid that I'm Big Bird. Are you going to tell me I'm Big Bird? No. So why does it matter if I say I'm afraid I'm going to hurt my kids? Because one of them feels and seems a little bit more real to the therapist. But in reality, both are completely ridiculous in me. Just because one in probability is more likely, like there's more likely chance of a mom hurting her kids than becoming Big Bird, the therapist is immediately going to jump on that. That doesn't make any sense because both of them are irrelevant to the reality and don't make any sense to who I am as an individual. We're seeing too many situations where medical professionals are assessing individuals wrong and not actually sitting down and listening with them and hearing their stories. And that's really, really where we need to start.
Yeah, and it's really important to me to it's education and discussions like this
Mm,
have really important role um, to make something to start change something, because when I was in radio or in television, there are so many people who ask me, Lucas, I know someone who have problem with checking doors or with going to the public toilets, and I
mm.
will and they started thinking about this, that it can be something more than just being organized or something.
Absolutely. And to that individual, and this is another thing that I will tell a lot of people when I'm just having like conversations like this, is just because that obsession is scary to the therapist does not mean it is the primary obsession or the worst obsession
Hmm.
for that client. Because even when I was dealing with my pedophilia fears, my struggles with symmetry were like 10 out of 10. Those were the ones,
Yeah.
that was the one that was impacting and impairing my life. I had only a certain amount of articles of clothing that I could wear because they felt even on me. Because if I didn't have even clothes, then I might snap at somebody or I might do something inappropriate because I don't feel right. And so hearing people say like, oh, the taboo stuff, this is where we really have got to sit down and have these conversations with our clients and say, okay, so which one is creating the most impairment? Because if a therapist would have sat me down and said, okay, so I understand that you're having these thoughts of pedophilia, but is that the one creating the most impairment? And it was absolutely not the one creating most impairment. It's almost kind of like silly at this point to say like, well, yeah, like the one that was creating the most impairment was the one where I couldn't sit on any couches or chairs because they didn't look even. I couldn't walk on carpet because it wasn't even. To some people that might sound silly, but to me it was absolutely earth shattering. And I was
Hmm.
missing social events. I was losing friends. I couldn't go to some weddings. I was really struggling in so many ways because of this. But the therapist heard pedophile, and that is the only one that they focused on.
Hmm. Yeah. But we can change this, and I'm so
Mhm.
happy because I was really afraid to start this series of live streams in English because I'm still feel that my English is not so good to speak
Oh
about
my gosh.
this.
This entire time, I was like, damn, his English is like legit. It's so good.
Yeah, but I know when I start to speak about this in English, this is two really good points, because it's like exposure for me,
Yep.
and second is the really huge role to help people, not as therapist, but as sufferer, to speak about it, to normalize it, and
Yeah.
uh, and this is small steps, but I really believe that we can change someone's life.
Absolutely. I did a Game Changers event a couple years ago. And since then, it was actually about a few months later or a year later after that event, one of the attendees reached out to me and they told me at that event that they were planning on ending their life. And they listened to my story and the three other individual stories we were sharing that day, and they realized that things can be very grim and things can also get better.
Mm,
And that person shared with me that they went to residential. They went and got some serious help, that they were really struggling. And it's nuts to me to hear, an individual that just went and heard some
Yeah,
individual stories. They were really sharing very, let's be real, very taboo stuff. Like, we don't hold back when we're telling our OCD stories by any means.
yeah,
And this person took that and got better. And it was such a beautiful reminder that this is why we do this advocacy. This is why we have these
yeah.
talks.
Absolutely, and I really want that we can someday speak so open to anyone, to our families, and yeah, I'm Lucas. I'm struggling with this, and I'm okay
Mhm.
with that. I'm in therapy. I live my life, and this is my OCD, but I'm still trying to get better, to make something better, something good to me and also to my family. But
Yeah.
we have to know that we really have to speak about these taboo thoughts, about OCD, about
Yeah.
mental health in general.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about, I don't, maybe this book, this is Lucas, you're getting my weird brain here, okay? I think about this book that kids are like, I mean, I didn't read it to my kids, but it's something that you read to kids while they're potty training. It's called Everybody Poops. Have you ever heard of that book?
No?
Okay. But the whole point of it is it's a way to normalize pooping for kids. And I really wish that we had ways to normalize mental health for kids, because think of how beauty, and I realize that there's more and more stuff getting out there for
Yeah,
sure.
this is the same
Uh,
situation like, for example, breastfeeding or something.
yes.
Yeah, but
Can
there
we
are
just
still,
normalize,
yeah,
like talking, like going back to stigma, like going back to like the three things? Can we normalize that, with the physical deformities, not everybody's going to look like you. Not everybody is going to act like you, and not everybody is going to be part of your same group. And having
mm,
that level of acceptance is such a beautiful thing. And can you imagine if we were taught all that at such an early age, how much less stigma could potentially be out there? But this is also like on a global scale. Like it's not just
yeah.
going to be in Poland and in the United States. This has to be absolutely everywhere. Otherwise, we're not going to make an impact. But down to the core, y'all, we're just humans and we're trying to make it. And can we stop being dicks to each other?
Yeah, yeah, agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, Krista, thank you so much for this
Yeah.
discussion, for this chatting, because I know uh, there is a really good vibe here, and
Oh,
I,
yeah.
I, I, I told last time I told I don't know Zach from Obsessive Compulsive
Uh-huh.
Memes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I told him I love Krista because she's so awesome. Yeah.
Oh, you flatter me. Thank you. And I'm so flattered that you wore a colorful shirt. That makes my heart so happy.
Ah,
That's
yeah.
such a rad shirt. I freaking love it. Tell your wife,
Yeah.
good job.
So thank you one more time. I really hope we can see we can meet each other someday, maybe in USA.
Yes. Are you coming to the conference? Are you going to Chicago?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I
I
I
understand.
think I can.
It's a little bit trickier for you.
Uh, mm, I told about this my wife, and she told me, okay, go there. But
Mhm.
this is really expensive to fly from Poland to Chicago. So I start with
Yeah.
GoFundMe or something. But I think mm, I hope I can go there.
I
And
hope you can too.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I know I will hug all these people because this is so amazing to speak here with you,
Yes.
to other people, because this is our first meeting.
It is. We've been chatting back
Yeah.
and forth forever, but yeah, this is our first meeting, and I really hope that if you can't go this year, hopefully you can go sometime in the future because the conference really is a very beautiful and accepting experience.
Mm, I know. I feel that, and I really hope I can go there in July. Yeah.
Yes, soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But
Okay.
thank
So,
you so much for having me on here. This has been a delight, and thank you again for all the advocacy and everything that you do for the community.
thank you so much, Krista. Have a nice day. Have a nice Sunday,
You
and
too.
the whole week I go to my
Yes.
kids.
All right.
Oh,
See you later. Bye.
bye bye. See you.